As some of you may know, back in the later half of March, the End of Evangelion was screened in theaters for 2 days for the first time in the US since its release back in the 90s. And as some of you may know, I recently started watching the Evangelion anime and finished it around the end of February. And so I decided to wait my turn to watch the film so that I could experience it for the first time in a theater. And let's just say the experience was surreal. I've decided to just abandon my attempts at a traditional review for this video, as I don't think that a film like this is really something you can judge the same way as many others, at least not the same as I have been on this channel. I've been sitting with my thoughts a lot ever since I saw the film, and I just really don't know how to articulate everything in a conventional way. And so I'm just gonna dive right into the deep end where I'm talking about my feelings towards this film, as I think that is what's best. Film is an art form, and art is meant to be felt as much as it is meant to be thought about. It takes just as much emotion to look into someone's work as it takes critical thinking, and in this case, I think it's more valuable. That's something I believe many people put aside and disregard, acting as if storytelling is this construct of checklists needing to be filled out in order to fit the standard of what good storytelling is, which I do not like. I also didn't read any interviews or look into any excerpts for this film or for Eva in general yet, as I just want to go off of first impressions and feelings for now, rather than to actually objectively analyze the work. I had no idea what I was in for when I took my seat in the theater for this film. I waited about a month after finishing the show just so my first experience with the End of Evangelion could be in the way it was originally intended to be. I feel like I'm a bit privileged to be having my first sit down with the film in a large auditorium filled with plenty of other Eva fans, for better and for worse. And I believe it's definitely played a huge part in my perspective of the film as well. I've had time to sit with the anime and decided to take my time to sit with this film for a bit before writing the script for this video, which again, I'm thankful to have done. The End of Evangelion in a way feels like a glimpse into heaven and hell merging together for 90 minutes straight. Some of the most gorgeous and angelic imagery with some of the most bleak and horrific meanings and undertones to them, but with a lot of cathartic and hopeful tones to it as well. In a way, it's like a clash of your good thoughts and your bad thoughts, and whichever one is winning is kind of up to you. For a lot of my screening, I had a very blank, wide-eyed stare on my face because I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. From the very moment the film starts, you're put into a very uncomfortable state and are never pulled out of it until that ending card pops up and the screen turns off. You're never allowed to truly breathe because none of the characters have gained that privilege, so why do we? I don't want to sound like I'm over-sophisticating myself, but in this case, it's hard to talk about this film in the ways I talk about most things on this channel. For all of its abstract nature, it never stops feeling real. None of it ever loses me. It's never not concise despite how all over the place it tends to be. I stay on board all throughout despite how much certain sequences decide to abandon reality and linear storytelling and dive into more contemplation and conversation. We are presented with lots of death, blood, tragedy, berating, and sexual imagery that creates this bleak image of a world that only feels like a slight exaggeration of our own. So different and yet so similar. It feels like Anno spent the first hour or so of this film throwing all of his anger, self-loathing, hatred, and just about every possible visceral feeling and thought in his body at the wall to paint a brutal, unforgiving image of the end of his story, that he might have also envisioned as the end of himself, knowing what he was going through at the time of this film's production and release. And yet the last 15 minutes of the film are much quieter and are a much slower reflection of those things, of those feelings, of those thoughts. a calm reflection and acceptance of emotion and thought, an acceptance of ourselves, and an acceptance of reality. An image of the mind calming down and finally being alone to contemplate and converse with itself, to ask yourselves questions like, is all of this really worth it? Should I be here? Why am I here? And so on, so forth. The film in itself is sadness, and it never loses that sadness, using unusual images and clips from real life to paint the fabrications we make up for ourselves so we can continue to run away. I won't act like I understand everything about this film objectively, but through opening myself up to whatever the work had to offer to me before it began, I gained my own interpretations of these things that make me feel it all the more. For about 90% of this film, you're put through this torturous tragedy of what living in a war, tragedy, famine-stricken world is like, making you wish so much that you could just let it all go. And yet, you calm down, reflect, and analyze your situation near the end, and accept that it's okay to acknowledge these emotions you're feeling. It's okay to acknowledge the thoughts you're thinking. It's okay that we can never truly be one with everyone else, as there are parts of ourselves that we just cannot open up. But through cooperation, communication, and understanding, we can connect in the best ways we can, even if parts of ourselves will remain away from them. No matter what, it's worth it to just try. That's one of the messages that I love very much about this film. I also really like the contrast between Shinji and Asuka in this film, and the differences in their resolve. Asuka, through the lift of her mother, clings to life so hard that it tears her apart, while Shinji clings so hard to death that it tears everything and everyone away from him, before slowly taking him as well. His ego destruction in the film was painful to watch. The screams of Shinji from the moment he discovers Asuka to his final scream during the third impact sequence has to be some of the most visceral and emotional screams I've ever heard in voice acting. And I'm seriously curious as to what the voice actress had to dig into in order to give such a painful outburst. Her work as Shinji was truly generational. The entire final 30 minutes of the film are some of the most jaw-droppingly shocking stuff I've seen, not because of content, but because of just how unbelievable it is to me that a human mind could create such a beautifully bleak sequence of animation and life come together for one of the most visually and thematically stunning stuff I've seen on film. How someone can paint this very dark image with so much hope in it, with so much bravery in it. In fact, I will say this, I'm not all too sure what people find so confusing about this movie. I know this film and just Eva in general has a reputation of being so inaccessible and difficult to understand and difficult to know what's even going on, and maybe I was just paying too much attention to it that I didn't feel that way, but yeah, I just didn't feel that way. It all felt very straightforward to me. If anything, I'd say this film is a lot more easy and digestible than the last two episodes of the anime, which hold your hand way less. Not that this film does hold your hand, but it's also much more straightforward and easy to follow for me, even if things get a little, weird. I do have to say this too, this film is somewhat bleak, but it is not nihilistic. It is not pessimistic, and it is not hopeless. This is not a hopeless story, and Evangelion is not a hopeless series. To me, the End of Evangelion is a very cathartic reflection of ourselves as humans and the world we've created because of our nature. It's hard to live in a world like this. It's hard to live in a world of our creation with all of these problems, with all of this tragedy. Sometimes it feels like the universe is working against you, and the only way out is to end all suffering with all life in general. But that's just the easy solution. Once again, we are human, we're alive, and as long as we're alive, we can try. The possibility for happiness remains. Anyone can be happy. We may get that feeling of hopelessness again. We may fall into a cycle of wanting things to end, but no matter what, we should carry on and live. We should try to connect. We should try to be happy, because it is possible. We can find or make a paradise for ourselves and the ones we connect ourselves with as long as we're alive. And that's something worth hoping and trying for. We can come back to this world, as ugly as it can be, and find beauty and happiness past our suffering. It is a long, painful road, but it's worth a try. The film may end with tears, with sobbing, with a bloody river, and with a vast space looking down on us, but at the end of the day, we still survive, and we can find something there. That's how I view the End of Evangelion, and I think that's the best and most mature possible ending you could give. I find it the most nuanced and the most cathartic. It feels easy to just let things be so bleak and hopeless by the end and just say, none of it is worth it, we should all die. But to me, it is all the more fitting, sensible, and most of all, brave to go through all of this pain, anger, rage, self-hate, and yet still come back around and say that we can still keep going regardless. I believe it takes a lot of bravery to paint an ending as emotionally resonant, nuanced, and uplifting as that, despite the harsh cruelties we suffer. And it's why I'm thankful to Anno for telling this story. This is easily one of, if not the best animated film I've seen, and just one of the best films I've ever seen in general. To round out what is, without a doubt, one of the best sci-fi stories of all time, and one of the best looks into humanity I've seen in all of art. The End of Evangelion is brilliant, and I will watch the rebuilds soon. However, I'm going to give that some time as I want to be able to sit with the original some more and rewatch it before I get into those. Plus, there are other films and shows that I want to talk about first. But when I do get to the rebuilds, I will be back with more Evangelion content. Until then, you'll just have to wait and be patient. For those of you who have stuck around, I ask you to stick around for just one more quick message. I have a friend named Isaac. He's a fellow YouTuber by the name of Grand Average Films on YouTube. He's a classmate of mine, we met in college. We're working on a short film together, and he worked on another film earlier in the year that has been screening at festivals and is going to be screening at the Cannes Film Festival later this year. In fact, it's happening in May. He just needs some help getting money to, actually be able to go because it's all the way in another country. There's a GoFundMe that you can donate to help him, actually go. He's gonna go no matter what, but it helps a lot. I figured I'd help him out with a little shout out here. I'll leave the GoFundMe in the description down below if any of you would feel kind enough to just donate, a couple bucks, even just $5 works. This is a dream for both of us, and he actually has a chance to further his dreams, so I want to help him out a bit, so go help him out if you can. That's all. And subscribe to his channel while you're at it, Grand Average Films. I'll leave that in the description too. He's a really good video editor, a really good filmographer, just a very good YouTuber and content creator as a whole, and he makes very interesting and cool content that you should check out. Thank you all for sticking by in this video and for just sticking by with the channel in general. If you enjoy this video, leave a like, comment down below your favorite Evangelion character and your favorite Evangelion movie, and of course, most of all, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click the bell notification button so that you can be updated on all my future uploads. I'm trying to reach 10,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I think that is very possible with the pace that we're going at right now. So once again, thank you all for your support, thank you for coming, and I'll see you all next time. Y'all have a good day.